Rambling can either mean to go for a nice little walk, or it can mean to talk absolute rubbish. This podcast is both. Join me as I walk around the towns and cities and highways and byways and canals and rivers and hills and fields and forests of the northwest of England and further afield, all the while giving you rambling talk. Yes, y'all, everybody. Here we are once again for another little ramble. It is Monday the 15th of March, 12:40 p.m, and today we are in Disley. More specifically, we're at Lyme Park. Or we're just actually on the outskirts of the park at this very moment. My intention was originally to go through the main entrance where the cars go through, walk through the park that direction, but because I am on foot and I am on my own, there's another little road just as you're coming up to the park on the right, Coppice Lane. So I've decided to walk down here to see if there's a walking route into the park from here, because, well, I'm a curious George kind of person, and if I see somewhere where I've not been before, I have to walk there. Okay, there's a sign that says Lyme Park, Cheshire East, route number 17. So, yes, we have found an alternate route into the park, which is nice. It's nice to have options. So, let's see which part of the park this actually takes us to. So, being in Disley, we are actually in Cheshire East. We have left the Stockport Metropolitan Borough, county as it were, and we're in the county of Cheshire East. And I may have mentioned this before, a lot of people who live in Stockport, or people of a certain age who live in Stockport, like to say Stockport, Cheshire. But did you know Stockport hasn't been part of Cheshire since 1974? In the 1st of April 1974, the boroughs of Bolton, Bury, Oldham, Rochdale, Stockport, Tameside, Trafford, Wigan and the cities of Manchester and Salford became Greater Manchester. So, what's that now? 47 years ago. Oh, I'm going across a train track. Wasn't expecting that. So yes, for 47 years, Stockport hasn't been part of Cheshire. So as much as you would like to think you were the Cheshire set mother, you are not, unfortunately. Okay, so we've come into the park now over a stile. I believe we're just kind of the west of the park, and we're just near the little streamy river that runs through, which I will find out where it goes for you. I will. And I'm sort of to my, let's get the compass out, shall we? So sort of to the south we've got the woods, and then sort of to the east southeast we've got kind of what we're looking for, our first port of call, the cage, which I will tell you more about when we get a little bit closer. But for now we shall just crack on towards the main car entrance. Okay, so I'm just starting to traipse up the first kind of hill, very bloody muddy hill, a lot of footfall, a lot of people have been coming through, made it very muddy and slightly treacherous underfoot, but reminds me of when I used to come to Lyme Park when I was a kid, because the main reason most people from this neck of the woods would come to Lyme Park, or at least the reason that me and my brother and parents did, is because it is the first kind of hills, big hills, near Stockport and the surrounding areas. And it was always somewhere that we came for sledging. Great fun for sledging. So many hills to boom down on your sledge. I mean, I'm not that much into sledging these days as an adult. My older brother is still addicted to sledging as soon as the snow comes out, with or without the kids. Yeah, maybe I should go with him next time. It is fun to be a big kid, innit? We get precious little snow, obviously. We really should take advantage of it while we can. So, just as it gets to 1 p.m. in the afternoon, we've got the sun rising above us, a few clouds around, but no dark clouds, thankfully. And just to our east, we have Disley Black Rocks, which is it's just a local ridge, basically. and you get some lovely views from there. So we may potentially go up there, or we may go up to the Bowstones, which is just in Disley and the surrounding countryside, just above Lyme. Like, I've not got a proper route planned out today, because I know the surrounding countryside fairly well, and it's much more fun to just wander around without a plan, I find. We've got the Cheshire Plains unfolding to the west and east, and we've got the Cage just coming up to us straight ahead, south, if we're going to stick with the compass bearings. So we'll just crack on with this mooch. Okay, so just as I have actually got to the Cage, I'm kind of shielding in a little alcove just to protect the audio from the wind, which I forgot to consider. I don't have a big damper on my microphone or anything, but obviously the higher up you go, the windier it gets. So we're at the Cage right now. Just to the west of us, you can see sort of the whole Cheshire Plain. You can see as far as the city of Manchester today, and just behind that you can see the hills as well if you look carefully. It's a relatively clear day, and we're at the Cage. So what is the Cage, I hear you wonder? So the Cage was originally built in 1524 by Paisley V. So the Lee family are basically the people that owned this ground from 1398 right up until 1946. Generations of the Lee family owned all of Lyme, and the Cage was built, as I said, in believed to have been built in 1524 by Paisley V, who was known as the warrior priest, would you believe it? Which is a bit of a contradiction in terms. I think it is anyway. Back in the day, holy men were very often harbingers of war, and they are until this day as well, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I mean, it's the warrior priest. He was called that because he was a priest. He was ordained, and he also fought in the Battle of Bosworth during the War of the Roses. So he originally was on the side of York. So he originally was on the side of York. So that's Richard III's side in the War of the Roses, the House of York. He originally fought for them, but actually during the Battle of Bosworth, which was the last significant battle of the War of the Roses, he actually switched sides and fought for the House of Lancaster, who won the battle and eventually the war. And Richard III was actually killed in that battle. And Richard III was the last monarch to be killed in battle. Let me see if I can get the date on that for you. So, the Battle of Bosworth took place in 1485. After the battle, he was knighted, and the Cage was actually built in 1524. But yeah, basically it's a big sort of got four big massive pillars. It's 3 stories high, and it was originally used as a hunting lodge, so you could look out over your land and see whether it was time to go hunting. After that, it was used as a prison for poachers. So people who would, the common folk who would, break onto the land that wasn't theirs, they would get caught and they would get locked up in there. And it was also used as a stop when carting prisoners across country to Manchester, for example. This would be a stop off over the peaks. They would stop there for the night and then continue on to Manchester the following day. After that, it became the house for staff of the park rangers, that kind of thing, anyone who worked here. Which, when you think about it, when you see some pictures, like, the view would have been absolutely beautiful, because the view is beautiful, but imagine just living on the top of this isolated bloody hill with nothing around you. There will have been no running water, obviously no electricity. So yeah, it would have been a hard life living on the top of this hill. No nipping down to the shops for some beer or some milk. So I had a masterstroke the other day. Well, I thought I had a masterstroke. So my walking boots are leather, and I'd run out of polish, proper shoe polish. So I had the bright idea. I thought, surely if you just put anything greasy on your boots, it'll kind of soften the leather and waterproof it and whatnot, just so it doesn't crack. So we had some duck fat in the fridge left over from Christmas, and I rubbed that on my boots and it seemed to work really well. But when I came down this morning, there was this is several days later and after a couple of walks, but there is now what appears to be white furry mould on my boots. So obviously it wasn't that much of a masterstroke, because I could have sworn I read somewhere that back in the day, back in medieval times and whatnot, that's what they used to waterproof the leather. And I was half right, basically. I've just looked it up. So dubbing, which is kind of the stuff that you still buy from the shop to this day, has been in use since the medieval times and the Middle Ages. And I was half right. So what they used to do was they used to get tallow, which is animal fat, beef fat, sheep fat, whatever, and they would mix that with beeswax, basically. What you wanted was 3 parts wax, 1 part oil or fat, and that would make your boot polish. So even though I have mould on my boots, my masterstroke wasn't far off. I just needed some beeswax, but I had no beeswax in the house. So it did waterproof and soften me shoes for a while, but eventually it seems it leads to mould. So I'll have to give these a proper scrub when I get in and maybe buy some actual proper shoe polish. Or maybe try and make my own dubbing. Why not? So, right, we're at the house. The house at Lyme Park, which is a big, grand old building. So it was actually built in the late 16th century. And the modifications that made it all spunky and nice to look at were in the 1720s by an Italian bloke called Giacomo Leone. He maintained most of its Elizabethan features and added some more, like he added the courtyard and things like that to make it a bit more grand. But I wonder where they actually lived prior to the house being built. It's not something I've actually found out, because the park estate has been in the hands of the Lee family since 1398 up until 1946 when the National Trust bought it. Where the hell did they live prior to that? Because there's the paddock cottage, there's the little house just off to the left of the main house, but I don't actually know where they lived prior to that. I could do with finding that out. But anywho, the house itself, anyone who's into sort of classic literature, it was where the production of Pride and Prejudice, the BBC production of Pride and Prejudice, was filmed. The one with Colin Firth. Can't say I've seen it. I'm not particularly that into classics like that. I find them a little bit detached from my life. Like, I can't really get into him for that reason that much. Maybe I just need somebody to inspire me, because classic literature is classic literature for a reason. And not too long ago I was actually in a Zoom play production, or more like a reading of Jane Eyre, which I'd never read before, but I actually really like the story of Jane Eyre, about, the poor orphan child who goes to live with the nobility, and she's kind of, always been picked on a little bit, but she's plucky and she stands up for herself. Maybe that makes me a feminist, I don't know. But yeah, I really like the story of Jane Eyre. She almost doesn't take no shit. She was slightly cocky to Rochester, which in those days would have been bloody unheard of, to be cocky to your boss and master, even though he was a bit of a shit. But yeah, he was all fucked up in Jane Eyre. But anywho, what I know it from is, did you know that Lyme Park house was actually in an episode of Red Dwarf? So it was series 3, I think it was episode 5, Time Slides. It's the one where Crichton mutates the developing film for photographs, and that means you can actually jump into the photograph. Lister has the idea that he wants to make his 17-year-old self rich and a millionaire. So what he does is he goes back to see his young self and tells him that he has to register this invention with the patents office, the tension sheet, which a friend of Rimmer's from his childhood did. Yeah, it's a piss funny episode. You see a 17-year-old Dave Lister, and he's performing in like a pub in Liverpool, and he had 2 other members of the band with him, just a drummer and a bass player, who were actually the drummer and bass player from the death metal band from Liverpool, Carcass, who, I don't know, maybe they were mates of Craig Charles, because he's obviously a Scouser himself. But yeah, Little known fact that I found out is that the members of the death metal, or melodic death metal as they like to be described, band Carcass featured in Red Dwarf, and in that very same episode Lyme Park featured, because when he was a millionaire this was sort of the manor house that he owned. And in the courtyard, he had it was like basic CGI from the time of like a big giant statue that he wanted to have urinate champagne into the courtyard because he's classy like that. But it's been used in quite a few TV productions and films. There was the BBC drama The Village. It was in that, and it was also in the horror, supernatural, chiller thriller The Awakening, starring Dominic West, amongst other people. I think if I came into a ridiculous amount of money like Lister in Red Dwarf, I think I would probably be very much like him. So he basically spent all his money on like real scummy stuff. Like he had sausage butties flown in from the place where he used to go when he was a kid, and like I say, giant statues that urinate champagne into the courtyard. Butlers left, right and centre. What the hell would you even do with all this land? You know, I'm not into hunting, so wouldn't use it for hunting. What the hell did anybody do with so much land throughout these generations? It's just ridiculous, you know, land ownership like that. But obviously it's not the case anymore. You know, since 1946, this has been National Trust, and ordinary members of the public been able to walk around and enjoy the land. Because what would you even do with this land, really? Apart from hoard it and hoard money like people do these days. Jeff Bezos and the like could actually end world hunger, poverty and everything if they wanted to. But no, let's get a big money pile and roll around in it because I can, because that's capitalism. Okay, so obviously if I owned this land in modern day, I would have a kick-ass music festival here. That's a no-brainer. It would actually slightly be in contention with the Why Not Festival, which is at Pike Hall in Derbyshire, not too far from here. But if I owned this land and I had the money, I would book a kick-ass festival here. Yeah. More stages and more bands than Why Not Festival. And it wouldn't get called off like Why Not did a couple of years back. Called off due to bloody weather. Ridiculous. Didn't even plan ahead. Never been a problem for Glastonbury, has it? Even back in the day when they were small. But yeah, I would like to host my own music festival. So in the house at Lyme, there's a lot of very important and interesting historical artefacts and pieces of artwork, but one that I'm going to mention is what's called the Sarum Rite Mass. So basically it's the earliest printed example of the Latin Mass known as the Sarum Rite, and that was used from the 11th century and was developed in Salisbury from the original Roman Mass. It was used for many hundreds of years, but this book, which was actually published by William Caxton, I actually learned about this bloke in primary school. He was the person who had the first printing press in Britain. He didn't actually print this himself, the Sarum Rite Mass. He got it printed in Paris, but he was one of the first people to actually get books printed out of the country, because not many people had the links to do that, obviously. He was extremely popular because it was the Mass that was kind of the standard up until the English Reformation. So when Henry VIII obviously came into power, and I'm sure everybody knows about Henry the Bloody Eight. My God, he was a shit, wasn't he? But after he'd had some divorces and the Pope had started to deny his annulments, obviously he separated and formed the Church of England. And the title that he actually gave himself, which I think is hilarious, obviously the man was a huge, massive egomaniac. In 1534, he passed the Act of Supremacy, which declared that he was the supreme head on earth of the Church of England. So he's literally given himself a sort of messianic title, almost. But this book, which is housed in Limehouse, the Sarum Rite, was actually, illegal from that point, because he created the Church of England, where Mass was to be said in English, and Latin was not legal anymore, so it was hidden by the family and not seen by anybody until it was rediscovered in 1874 by a bloke called William Brenchley Rye. He was a scholar from the British Museum, and yeah, he rediscovered it. It was displayed in a glass case for scholars and family visitors to admire only. When the Lee family left the house in 1946, it actually stayed in their possession. So when they actually left Lyme, it stayed in their possession, and it was held for safekeeping in John Rylands Library in Manchester. But it was purchased in 2008 by the National Trust, and that was at a cost of £465,000. But they did get support from the Heritage Lottery Fund, and since then it has been in display in Lyme Park House. So obviously we are still during the times of COVID. You can't go in and look at it now, but it is there, and you can actually look at digital copies and hear extracts sung in Latin. So if that is your jam, soon as lockdown is over, I'm sure you won't be running to the pub or to a live music venue or to a restaurant. You'll be running straight to Lyme Park to look at the Sarum Rite Mass and listening to the extracts sung in Latin. So Lyme Park House is reputed to be one of the most haunted stately homes in England. A well-known apparition that is said to appear there is the Lady in White, Blanche. The story is that Blanche died of grief after the loss of her lover. Her body was discovered in a meadow nearby called Lady's Grave. Inside the house, a room that is known as the Haunted Room was once discovered to be hiding a skeleton with a secret chamber. In 1999, a young boy allegedly became hysterical at the sight of children playing in a room, yet adults could not see them. Temperature drops have been reported, as has the smell of oranges. Ooh, spooky. Also sounds to me like a load of bollocks. I currently don't think I believe in ghosts. I do. I changed my mind a lot. Like when I was a kid, I used to love reading ghost stories. And the fact that you can kind of lose yourself in something and almost tell yourself that it's real is kind of fantastical and wonderful. But it's when you actually truly start believing it that I just think, I don't know, I'm stuttering and spluttering. Basically, I don't believe in ghosts. I believe in science more than anything. And I think that natural phenomena could probably explain a lot of these sort of sightings. Like, people could have had fevers. Like, because you hallucinate when you have a fever. They could be on drugs. I just believe in science, what can I say? Because there's something which kind of made me double down on that. I kind of got a little bit of an interest in magic in the past few years. And through that, I kind of got into the likes of Penn and Teller, the magicians, Penn and Teller. They're very sort of transparent with their magic. They don't claim to have divine powers. They tell you that they're fooling you. And quite often they will show you how they do it. And through getting into Penn and Teller, I learned about a bloke called the Amazing Randy, James Randi, who was a magician and illusionist from right back in the, I want to say the 40s, to be honest. He died late last year or early this year, and he was a professional skeptic. And he started something called the James Randi Educational Foundation, and I believe the number started at $100,000, went up to $1 million when his foundation became more established. And for something like 40 years, his challenge was if anybody could prove their powers, their clairvoyance, their telekinesis, their telepathy, their, oh bollocks, what's it called now? Oh, when they think they can see the future. Oh, I forget what that is. But all this bollocks. And the claim was, not the claim, basically the challenge was that if anybody can prove that they have otherworldly powers under lab conditions, they would get the money, $1 million. And for 40 something years, that prize was never claimed. And he was a well-known debunker of people who hoodwinked people, basically. Because mediums, for example, I think are the worst. Because they're basically fleecing people who are quite often grieving by telling them that they can speak to their dead loved ones. And all they're doing is getting money off the bereaved. I have a similar opinion on, preachers. Not that much in this country. You don't get it as much in this country, I don't think. But you get it a lot in America. The sort of evangelical hellfire and brimstone type. James Randi, there was what do they call them? Televangelists. So evangelists who are television stars. And there was a bloke called Peter Popoff, who was one of the biggest televangelists of the 1980s. And what he used to do was, this bloke, Peter Popoff, he used to send plants out into the lobby prior to his show taking place so that he could overhear conversations of people. So, you know, so-and-so would be there going, oh no, I hope he's going to look at my bad back. I hope he's going to look at my bad shoulder. I've got lymphoma. I've got this, that, the other. And they would go back to him with the report. And he, whilst he was on stage, would wear an earpiece, and his wife, who arranged the plants, would go so-and-so, the big fat bastard in the front row, in the wheelchair. Come on, let's make some money with this one. Say really horrible things. And basically, he would make like he was getting a message from the divine above and make it look like, you know, he was very loud and very commanding. And he would do the whole "Begone, Satan" thing kind of on their foreheads. And the power of suggestion, especially when being on stage in front of a massive crowd, is definitely something, the power of suggestion. And you can actually feel like you may be even slightly healed, but you're not medically healed. All he was doing was fleecing people. And I know that's not directly linked to, you know, ghosts and stuff. I don't think when it comes to ghosts, anybody is trying to fleece anybody. All I'm kind of saying is, I reckon that it's much more likely that it is explainable by natural phenomena. Science is a lot harder to understand than just having blind faith in something. Like, if you have blind faith in anything, no matter what, in your views, the person with the faith, that outweighs everything. So you just can't argue with people of faith in those kind of scenarios, because they generally won't listen to science and peer-reviewed facts, because it's much harder to understand. You have to do a lot of studying. And I'm not saying I even do the studying, it's just I think you have to put a level of trust in people who are just cleverer than you. Sometimes it sounds like a quite elitist thing to say that, really, but I think sometimes you have to put a level of trust in people. And I can understand why people are skeptic, but do your research properly. Don't just say, I've done my own research, because people tend to research only things which support their argument. To gain true knowledge, you actually need to research both sides of any argument, then come up with your own deductions through reading a balanced amount of research on each topic. And at the moment, I don't believe in ghosts. Okay, so I climbed the hill and I am out of the Lyme Park boundary now. I'm just along this ridge that runs basically the Gritstone Trail. Gritstone Trail actually runs from Disley. It starts at Disley train station and actually runs all the way to Mocop, which is Staffordshire. Comes up at Mocop Castle, which is a very beautiful castle there. So let's just see, how long is the Gritstone Trail? I believe it's 49 mile. Let's see. So the Gritstone Trail is 56 kilometres, which is around 35 miles. And say it takes most people about 3 days. I think I could do it in 2. 35 mile. I mean, it all depends on where you stop. You know, you could wild camp. You're not supposed to. It is, you know, technically illegal to wild camp. But so long as you're up nice and high, so long as you're away from main trails, and so long as you leave no trace, you know, you can kind of get away with it. There's only one instance when I did try to wild camp, and it was an absolute fucking disaster. But we didn't bring a tent. So basically, my mate Brendan, who's been a very, very good friend of mine for a long time, we was actually mates in primary school, since primary school, but I digress. So Brendan was in the cadets, in the army cadets, and he actually did end up, you know, going on to serve in the army. He was in Iraq back in the early 2000s, but up to that point he wasn't a soldier, but he had always been interested in the military and was a cadet. So therefore, I trusted him to know what he was talking about. So, like I say, we're about 17, 18, and he goes, let's go and have a hike up Kinder Scout, you know, the tallest peak in the northwest, and we'll stay over the night, but we don't actually need a tent, so to speak. What I learned to do in cadets, right? In cadets, I learned that you get a big military poncho, which covers your entire body, and you can basically stick 2 twigs at either end, or 2 small poles at either end, and rig it over, you know, a piece of twine or string, and you're only, you know, 10 inches off the ground or whatever, but it'll cover you entirely, and if it does rain you won't get wet. I was like, mate, that sounds amazing, like we won't really have to carry any weight at all. So we start walking up Kinder Scout, and basically it just pissed it down non-stop from probably about 11 o'clock in the morning right through to the following day. It must have rained for 20 straight hours or something, and we got very wet. And there was a little stream halfway up Kinder, which had turned from a little tiny stream you could hop over into a bloody, well, it looked like a river, basically a raging torrent. And I was like, yeah, don't worry, we can just wade across it. and you know, a bit of current had actually picked up in it, and it actually swept me down downstream for a short while. I mean, I got out, I was in no danger of drowning, but I was piss wet through. But anyway, we cracked on. We kept our spirits high, cracking jokes, you know, young lads, don't care too much. When we got to the top of Kinder, the rain had not stopped at all, and the ground was so wet and basically just muddy sludge that we couldn't even hammer poles into it. So we couldn't rig up our little bivvy tent, our little poncho tent. So the rain, which did not stop, basically continued to come down. We couldn't hammer the poles in, so we had no taut surface. The zip broke on my sleeping bag. I had like a bivvy over the top of it, a plastic bag. So basically I was lay on top of a mountain in the torrential rain with a tarpaulin over the top of me, laying a plastic bag basically, because the zip was broken on my sleeping bag, and I did not get one wink of sleep. And at one point I think Brendan just pretended to be asleep just because he couldn't be arsed listening to me whinge any longer, and but I knew he wasn't asleep because I heard him laughing, because at one point when he was pretending to be asleep I just went, "Oh well, this is just fucking brilliant, isn't it?" to no one in particular. And yeah, he giggled at that. When we woke up in the morning, having had no sleep whatsoever, having to yomp back, I think the rain had actually stopped by morning, but you know, we'd been wet constantly, and by the time we actually got back to Stockport, I believe I actually had a form of trench foot. Like, my feet had been wet that long that they looked like they had started to rot. And yeah, that was my experience wild camping with Brendan. So if I do go wild camping ever again, I think I might bring a tent with me. Okay, so if I continue heading in this southwesterly fashion, let's just double check the old cum pie. It's like cum pie, like it's a pie of cum. I was thinking, you know how the plural of octopus is octopi and not octopuses, so I thought I would pluralise compass to cum pie, but I didn't realise how rude it would sound. Okay, yeah, so we're kind of heading in a southwesterly fashion, more towards south than southwest. We should very soon be coming along to the Bowstones, I believe. But now I'm just going to continue to yomp in a non-specific fashion across these hills. Okay, so as the wind increases up here on the Cheshire hillside, I may have actually taken my first wrong turn in, maybe. I could have sworn it was this way towards the Bowstones. Legend has it that's where Robin Hood and his merry men stopped to string their bows, but there's no historical fact in that, apparently. But anyway, we haven't come up on the Bowstones yet, which are just two crisscrossy kind of rock stone protrusions. The thing is, we haven't actually come up on them. We have not actually come upon the Bowstones. So I don't know if they were back the other way, but we're coming to a road now, and I believe the road takes us to Kettleshume. So where should we go? I wonder whether the bloke slightly ahead of me thinks that I'm following him. That's the thing when you're walking in the countryside and you're walking the same way as somebody else, because there's nobody else around. Definitely looks like you're following him. Hopefully he's not self-conscious of it. It is a bloke, you know, it's not a lady lone hiker. Obviously a lot in the news currently at the moment about you know, women's safety. That young lady, I believe her name was Sarah Everard, hopefully I've not got that wrong, was, you know, kidnapped and murdered by a police officer. And just the other night they had the vigil in Clapham Common and all that, and they say, you know, it's all about education. Be conscious that you might make a female feel uncomfortable, you know, if you are walking the same direction as her, maybe cross over the road just to put her at ease, which I do, but you can't necessarily do that, can you, when you're in the countryside? Okay, so it appears I'm going to stay on the Gritstone trail for at least a while longer, and we're just at the sign for Pot Shrigley. So, looks like I'm going to Pot Shrigley. So I've walked down Bakestondale Road for maybe a mile and a half, and instead of actually going down into the village of Pot Shrigley, I mean, there's nothing of incredible note there, I don't believe. I've actually found another footpath across the hills, and it says Bowstones. Spons Hill and Bowstones. So we are going to go back and we are going to find those Bowstones. That's what we're going to do. Caution, unprotected mine shafts in this area. So we shall do our best to not fall down an unprotected mine shaft. And even if we did, who knows what we might find. Maybe it was a gold mine and there was gold left there. More likely not. I believe they mined lime. Did they mine lime? I'm guessing that's why it was called Lyme Park. I know as I came out of Lyme Park onto the Gritstone trail, they've got those big mounds of white powdery lime. I think that's what it is. But yeah, anywho, we'll try not to fall down a mine shaft anyway. Prior to, councils and whatnot installing way markers and signs and arrows pointing you in the right direction, I wonder back in the, I suppose any time kind of prior to the late 1800s, I bet these kind of paths weren't very well maintained. And how many people just got lost all the time? Or do people back then have a better inbuilt sense of where they are in the world? I'm inclined to say no on the wider scale, because back hundreds of years ago people thought that their corner of the world was the whole world really. They may have had a notion of where London was, and they may have heard about France and Europe and the Far East Asia, but they can't have had any real concept of how far away it was. But when it comes to their local area, maybe they did just know it better. But these green fields, one very much looks like the other. And without, GPS and signs, I reckon I could do all right without GPS. Just working on signs and my actual knowledge of the area. But we have become increasingly reliant on our technologies, haven't we? Yeah. But a lot of technologies do make our life easier. It's about finding that balance in it, I think. Like, I'm using my technology to go out in the countryside, which is nice. But I still reckon I could get around fine without my GPS. Even so, as said it in the past, I fucking love getting lost when I've got the time to do it. That is what makes the adventure. Okay, I am such an idiot. So, I'm back at the top of Lyme, just where we meet the Gritstone trail. I went immediately right. All I had to do to find the Bowstones was go immediately left, and it's got to be 20 feet. And here we are, we're at the bloody Bowstones. Jesus Christ. Next to Bowstones Farm. The Bowstones. 2 shafts of late Saxon crosses, which were probably landmarks or boundary stones, as well as objects of devotion. The cross heads with interlace on the courtyard of Lyme Hall are likely to be from the Bowstones. Well, isn't that interesting? And obviously you've got twats who've engraved initials on there. Even though this is bloody God knows how many hundreds of years old, it's important that they now have the letter W engraved on them. Very not impressive, they're just 2 shafts of stone, but you never know, when you really think about it, will have been places of worship for pagans maybe. It's where they worshipped the sky god, the sky. Of course, God is in the sky, where else would he be? Oh, I suppose if you're pagan, you believe there is a god in the river, a god in the sky, a god in the forest, a god in the trees. That's much more believable for me anyway. I like that. I might become a pagan. And then you can, go to Stonehenge, tap on some rudimentary drum while the sun comes up, and, dance around in some, animal skin. Yeah. I think I'm going to become a pagan. So we're still on the Gritstone trail. We've just kind of looped round just adjacent to the road. I believe it's Mudhurst Lane. It's the road that basically runs from Disley to Kettlesheim. We're just adjacent to that, just below Black Rocks. So we've got Black Rocks just to the east again, but we are now travelling. Let's get the compass out. We've got to be travelling north now, surely. We are now travelling. Yeah, we're travelling north. I know my directions. So yes, we're now travelling north, and to the east of us we do have Disley Black Rocks, but it's getting a bit later in the day now. And we do still have sunlight left, but I suppose you could partially contribute it towards laziness, and you could partially contribute it towards I'm hungry. I haven't ate anything yet today because I'm doing my fast. But I'm just thinking about it now. How long would it take to get up to Disley Black Rocks? Yeah, man, I'll get to the bus stop before 5. Yeah, fuck it, let's go up Black Rocks as well. It won't take long. Another half an hour tops, if that. Yeah, man. Okay, so I'm up atop Disley Black Rocks now. I mean, I don't know what in particular that has added to the podcast if you're just listening in audio, because all that it's added to you is this very speech, very loud wind noise. But I shall be taking some photos up here. I've taken quite a lot of photos along the way today, and I am starting to put everything onto YouTube now. So you can listen to the audio and look at the pictures of where I've been on the old YouTube. And if I can, you know, get my sort of technical head game on and clear enough room on my phone, and maybe get some holders for my phone and a better microphone, I may even turn this into like a little vlog thing. But for now it's going to be pictures and audio on YouTube, and obviously if you do want the audio only, you've got it via Spotify, Pocket Casts, Anchor, all that good stuff. Anywho, let's take some photos. Oh, what the fuck's that? Some little weird ghost thing. Oh, I'm taking a photo of that, definitely. Weird. Always feels slightly weird when you're going through these paths that literally go through somebody's garden. Look at these little tiny horses, they're so cute. Hello, little horsey. Hello. You friendly horsey? Oh, they're kissing. Anywho, well, we'll crack on down into Disley Village, and then that's us pretty much done. Okay, so as I'm just getting to the bottom now of Buxton Old Road, we're pretty much coming to the very end of the walk. You know, we're in the village of Disley, and my bus stop is just down the bottom of the hill. So we're just coming up on the Ram's Head at the bottom of Buxton Old Road as we get into the village of Disley, and we're just coming to the end of the walk, really, to be perfectly honest. I can see my bus stop from here, and we're just coming alongside the Ram's Head. So the Ram's Head actually used to be part of Lyme Estate, and it was built by the Lee family circa 1640, but like I say, it was actually part of their estate, so it wasn't a pub then. The current exterior was built around 1840, and it became the main coaching stop on the Manchester to London journey. Okay, I am going to call it a night there. The sun's just going in, it's 5:05, and I want to go home and get me tea. So, thank you very much for listening to me. Oh, we're just coming alongside a nice little war memorial here, just outside the Ram's Head. So yeah, we're going to call that a night. Thank you very, very much for listening to me ramble on and sing my song. But yeah, thanks for listening to me ramble on. Like I said, you can find me in all the places, well, most of the places where your podcasts are found. Spotify, Pocket Casts, Anchor. There are some others. I've not got us onto iTunes yet, because that's something I have to do manually. I've not got around to it yet. So if anyone does want to listen via iTunes, I'm sorry, I will get it up on iTunes eventually. But like I say, you can find me on Spotify, Pocket Casts, Anchor, and you can find a picture version on YouTube. It doesn't have its own YouTube page, so just search Nick Stefan Brown and you will find the ones that are up there. You will also find some of my acting stuff and some of my YouTube review videos if you're at all interested. If you want to subscribe to that and put some comments on there, I will love you forever. But I'm going to sign off for now. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.